All right. Peace, y'all. Peace, and welcome back to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory with your girl, Jacqueline B. Today, I am very happy and excited to be introducing a very exciting and special guest. Her name is Jacqueline J, and I'm going to bring her to the stage for you guys so that she can introduce herself. So, without hesitation, here we go. Hey, Jacqueline.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Good to see you.
You too, you too. So, can you just introduce yourself to the audience and kind of let everybody know what it is that you're doing at this particular time?
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. Jacqueline Smith here, also known as Jacqueline J. I am a wife, a mother, a business owner, a career person, and I'm also a grieving mother. My 22-year-old daughter passed away 5 years ago, and I have been on a journey, continue to be on a journey of grief and growth and transformation and so many other things that I did not expect, was not anticipating, did not ask for this role or this assignment, but it's one that's been given to me. And so I am now embracing it in prayer to be able to assist others.
Well, I want to thank you for making time to be on here today, first and foremost. And I want to say I apologize, my deepest condolences for your loss.
Thank you.
I couldn't even imagine. If you don't mind, kind of like, how did your daughter, how did she pass away? And
She was in a car accident.
okay, all right, yeah, that's rough. All right, I'm gonna bypass that for now. So when you talk about like grieving and being like a grief advocate, what does that look like?
Grieving is a journey, not a destination. So it's not something where you arrive at that place and then you're done, at least from my perspective. A grief advocate is actually just that, someone that advocates for those who are grieving. I can't tell you how many mothers I have spoken to who have, and fathers too, but primarily mothers who have just had the most horrendous and horrible things said to them with regard to their children, their grieving, their process, their journey. And it's my responsibility to stand up for them, and not only stand up for them for others, but empower them to stand up for themselves and to help them recognize that this is a lifelong journey, and you may never get to total healing until you take your last breath. At least that's where I am in my journey. My grief journey will not end until I take my last breath.
Exactly. And then for anyone that's not familiar, because I do feel like it's important to know like the different stages of grief, and then just kind of like giving some insight as to how people can there's no easy way to get through it. But you if you know what I
Absolutely. No, I understand. And I may be a little bit controversial here, but I don't believe in stages of grief.
okay.
And one of the reasons is that, number one, when typically, as I've been studying and been in this space for this time, where the stages came from was from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and her work really was primarily dealing with the acceptance of those who were preparing to pass away. So not necessarily on the other side after the transition had taken place. So number one, I don't subscribe to that particular theory of grieving. My philosophy, if you will, is that, again, there are no stages. You can feel one thing today, and just because you no longer feel that emotion in this moment doesn't mean that it's not going to resurface, doesn't mean that it's not going to come back again. Emotions can ebb and flow, and go and come back. Some may not return. However, others may return daily or regularly. So it's ever evolving. It's always changing. It can sometimes be messy. It's unpredictable. Grief has no, just like becoming a parent, they say there is no handbook for becoming a parent. There is no handbook for grief either.
Yeah, I totally get that. So what are some ways you found healing after a personal loss? Can you share your experience?
Absolutely. One of the first ways that I found in starting my healing journey is definitely leaning on my faith. One of the, I often reference the poem about footprints. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I regularly acknowledge that the Lord is absolutely carrying me through each and every step and each and every moment of this journey, because there's no way that I could do it myself. If it wasn't for my faith, I literally would be sitting in a corner somewhere with my thumb stuck in my mouth, rocking back and forth, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life without my child.
Yeah, that's rough. That is very tough. And what is the, if you don't mind me asking, like, what is one memory you have of your daughter that kind of like keeps you going, and pushes you to um, be a support to other people that are going through probably similar things?
Thank you. There are so many, but actually, one that sticks out was a story that one of her classmates actually shared with me prior to her memorial service. And she just recounted the story of how she was being bullied
Mm.
in class, and Chantal told the bullies to stop. She took her outside, she comforted her, she talked to her, she and then continued to be friends with her, despite what others of her peers might have had to say. And so one of the things that just gave me such pride was that we teach our children these things when they're in the home, and we never know how those messages or those lessons are going to manifest themselves when they're outside of the home and actually dealing in society. So it just made me feel proud to be able to hear that she did take on those lessons and
Yeah,
did that.
yeah. No, that's definitely amazing because as parents, like you know how like you think like sometimes it falls on like deaf ears, so you don't know
Absolutely.
if they're actually taking in those things.
Yes,
So that must be like so
exactly.
heartwarming and like
Yes,
such a beautiful thing.
it was.
Turning pain into purpose is a profound journey. What was the turning point that helped you move from deep grief to a place of healing and empowerment?
Again, it's a lifelong journey, so I've not arrived. It's a daily challenge, if you will. Um, there are some days are better than others, some moments better than others, but it's just there's someone else out there that is not in this place, and there's someone else out there that doesn't have the same support, if you will, that I do. And so it's my responsibility to be that support, to let others know that you're not alone. There is someone that, although I may not understand your specific grief journey, your specific situation, your specific circumstances, and how you feel about your particular loss, I do understand loss, and I do understand that you need support and validation
Mm,
to assist with us, to assist you on your journey.
absolutely. So if you don't mind sharing, like maybe some tools or things that you might have done for yourself before you got to this point, just to kind of help you navigate through the grief process.
Absolutely. So again, one of the things is definitely my faith. Those that like to journal, or maybe if you haven't tried journaling, it's something that you can at least start. Journaling is not necessarily my forte, not something that I gravitate toward naturally,
Mhm.
but I do listen to music, and music has absolutely just centers me. And there are some songs that have the words when I don't, can speak to the emotion that I'm feeling in any given moment when I don't always have the capacity to articulate what it is I'm feeling.
Yeah. No, totally. My thing is like with music, I
Mhm.
use it as like medicine. So I find that I have a different type of ear, so I don't know what people they listening to, but I like to listen to like Earth, Wind, and Fire and like Michael Jackson, like the old stuff though, like
Yes, absolutely.
and Wynton Marsalis, because it's something very freeing and kind of like it almost feels like you're being healed from the inside out.
Mhm.
That's the power of music, I think.
Definitely. Michael Jackson, "You Are Not Alone," one of my go-to songs.
Oh,
Yep.
I absolutely love his stuff. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what led you to launch your podcast, A Quiet Strength, and what kinds of stories or messages can listeners look forward to with that?
So I am so proud of A Quiet Strength podcast. Thank you so much for asking. It actually debuts tomorrow, which would have been Chantal's 28th birthday. And so that's one of the birthday presents that I have created for her. And it's a faith-based podcast. It's really about it's going to be a daily podcast. It's about 5 to 10 minutes long. And we're just going to go through scripture and some reflection, provide some encouragement and a prayer, again, to assist individuals that may need that encouragement that may not be able to find it elsewhere.
Gotcha. And then as far as like length and like where people can find that, and I'm gonna bring it back up at the end too. But where can they find it? And then what else can they expect from it? Obviously, you have the tools that are necessary. So it's like come here to get some
Yes,
healing
definitely.
now.
So I also have some audio products that are available. One of the things that I recognized in this new digital world, if you will, of providing content and providing classes and things of that nature, is that with video classes, people don't it. You can turn off your camera, that's fine, but if you don't even have to do that from the outset, if you don't want to be around a whole lot of people for a group class or things of that nature. So I've created a program where you can receive the content, not be in a room full of other people, absorb it at your own time, at your own pace, and be able to access it that way. And all of those tools can be found on my website,
Awesome.
jjsmithconsulting.com. Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna make sure I put that down at the bottom for you as well. So you wrote a book as well, right?
I did actually too.
Okay.
Again, also Chantal's birthday presents.
Great.
One is When Grief Comes to Work, and that particular book speaks to organizations and how they assist their employees navigating their grief journey. Unfortunately, not all organizations are of the mindset or in that frame of being able to support someone who's grieving, because I can absolutely tell you a 3-day bereavement leave is
That's not
nothing depending upon the type of loss that was experienced. And that individual is not coming back to that organization the same person as they were when they left. And for organizations to embrace that and to work with their employees in order to be able to assist them in maybe navigating their responsibilities for a period of time, or maybe taking a different role for a period of time, but somehow working with the individual in order to be able to allow them to, again, grieve at their own pace, but also be a productive member of the organization.
that's
um, so that's one. And then the other one is A Quiet Strength, Devotions for Navigating Grief, Volume 1, which is also similar to the podcast. It just goes through some reflection questions, asking how you're feeling on that day. There's scriptures involved and some encouragement as well for those that want something tangible that they can hold in their hands. That will be available as well.
I love that. So, is it something that the people are able to like write in? Is it like journal style, or is it just like
In the Quiet Strength daily devotional, there is room for for you to be able to write in. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to make it a full-blown workbook, for people to be able to do that. I'm still struggling with that right now. So pray for me. I'm working on that part.
Gotcha. Writing writing about grief can be deeply personal and vulnerable. What was the most challenging part of creating these works, and what did you learn about yourself in the process?
The most challenging part, I think the most challenging part for me was finding the capacity to be able to share stories.
Mm.
Although I have gotten to a point to where I am able to share without completely breaking down every time. But again, that comes from the faith and knowing where she is, knowing that I'll get to see her again one day, even though I won't get to see her again here physically. Uh, so that was the catalyst or the drive that keeps me going in that area. And I found I one thing, I learned something new about myself every day. One of the things that I learned through this process was I didn't think I number one, I didn't think I had the capacity to be able to write a book. Number two, I didn't think the book would be anything that anyone wanted to hear or um, discuss, or because society is so against, if you will, and I don't want to say against per se, but we don't talk about grief in society in general. We don't. So just that angst, if you will, of having it be received and things of that nature. And I will be perfectly honest with you. I actually received this assignment from the Lord to well, it would have been 2 years ago last year. So going on 3 years. So in 2022, my husband and I took a trip to Cancun for a mini honeymoon, and I had an opportunity to participate in a flying dress photo shoot. And I tell you, standing on that rock with the sun on my face first thing in the morning and the wind blowing through my hair, and looking out over that vast ocean, the Lord absolutely spoke to me and told me what it was that He wanted me to do for these other grieving mothers, for individuals who are grieving, for those who want to support individuals that are grieving. And I also saw Chantal, and I I was just filled with an unimaginable awe. And then going back to what I'll call imposter syndrome, being completely transparent and vulnerable. I started doing some things. I had a podcast, I had a blog, and then I stopped.
Mm.
Who wants to hear about this? No one wants to hear from you. Had those voices in my head, on my shoulder, and things of that nature. And then once again, and God being God, He's funny. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll let you go ahead, do your thing. Go ahead on, and then I'll reel you back in. And then He did. He just, blind hit me across. He's like, I didn't tell you to stop. I didn't ask you what they said. I didn't ask you to listen to other people. I asked you to do what I told you to do.
Mm.
So here we are.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was just talking about that yesterday as far as like obedience, right? And how we always get, our promptings and directives, and we know, but it's like so easy to just be like, oh, no, you didn't really know, but you feel it in
Mhm.
like when it comes from God, you feel it deep down.
Absolutely.
So you have to be able to move, like you have to be movable. You can't just be like steadfast and like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. Because it's very easy to like get up inside your head. Like that imposter
Yes.
syndrome is a very, very real
Very,
thing,
very real.
you
Very
know.
real.
So I'm so happy that you were able to overcome that. And I love how, it took for you to kind of like be out in like amongst God, like next to the water, in the earth. Like there's no better place. Like and it's just that message comes through loud and clear, like because there's
Mhm.
there's no noise around you. It's just you and God and like, your mission.
Right.
Ultimately. So I love that. You focus on empowering women through self-care and financial independence.
Mhm.
Why are these two areas particularly important for women of navigating grief?
Wow. So that's a heavy question, but from a number of different perspectives. So, navigating grief, in addition to all of the other emotions and challenges that come along with that, sometimes we can neglect our finances.
Mhm.
And that can have a detrimental effect on so many other areas of our lives, whatever it is we're trying to do. But the one major thing was that I've spoken with so many moms that want to do something for their child. They want to honor their child. They want to start a foundation. They want to start a business that produces products. They want to do so many things, but they don't have the funding.
Mhm.
They don't have the capital to be able to do it. And in some cases, the credit needs to be beefed up in order to be able to do some of those things. So that's one of the reasons that financial literacy and financial empowerment, financial education is also so critical during our grief journey.
Absolutely. And are these things that you are going to be avidly showing and teaching people on your podcast and through your written literature?
Haven't gotten as far as the podcast yet, although that's not true. I am starting another podcast. But see, God's people are busy people. But see, I can also get ahead of myself and, try to run 10 miles down the road and, still be treading water. So I need to tread lightly. But yes, that is definitely something I'm going to be highlighting on my website, as well as it will be in upcoming episodes of A Quiet Strength podcast. But then I also will be developing a separate podcast that specifically speaks to finances because it is so critical, and especially for the reasons that I just identified.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And just to add on to that, I feel like just in general, it's more difficult when it comes down to grief, I can imagine, right? But overall, I don't know like a whole lot of women that have had like financial education, right? So they've either had to depend on their significant other, their husband, or somebody else, or they just kind of like try to figure it out by themselves,
Mhm.
and they're not able to properly delegate their finances. So it ends up taking a hit, and then their life is not like they don't have the best quality of life because they're missing that one vital aspect, which is that understanding the education behind being financially literate, and even as
Absolutely.
it pertains to credit.
Definitely. Definitely. And so stay tuned because the name of the podcast is Faith and Finance. So that is the name of the podcast when it comes out, Faith and Finance. And in addition, not only, the credit piece is so vitally critical, financial education so vitally critical. And one of the other things that I realized and recognized after the fact was Chantal didn't have a will, but who expects a 22-year-old to have a will? So navigating the probate process and the estate process, that was an entire challenge in and of itself as well. So that's one piece of financial literacy as well, having these documents and these items in place for our loved ones and our families to be able to navigate financially in our absence or in the event something happens to someone else, and then empowering people to have these family conversations, because that's another critical piece. We tend to keep these money matters, if you will, hidden and stifled, and we don't talk. There's so many things in our community we don't talk about, unfortunately, and so these are at least two of them that is part of my mission to bring to the forefront.
I love that you're giving back in that way. I feel like that's really important. And even as far as like the will part, I would have never like you don't just think like, hey, like let me make sure that my young adult has a will. Like we don't think like that. You
Exactly.
know what I mean? Like no one's teaching that. No one's saying, hey, have your affairs in order. Like we
Right.
usually wait until it's like later on.
Exactly.
Because I
Yeah.
just did a power of attorney and I'm, pushing 37. So I'm like,
Mm. Mhm.
um, you also lead workshops and retreats, correct?
Yes.
How do these experiences help women rebuild their lives and rediscover their strength?
Workshops allow us to be in community together with individuals that, again, may not know our specific circumstances,
Mhm.
but they get it.
Yeah,
And again, we can come together and realize and recognize that we're not alone, that there are others out there that are willing to support, that are willing to give, that are willing to just be there. So, and you know what? Sometimes grief support doesn't always look like words. Sometimes it's just being comfortable with sitting in the silence and
yeah,
letting someone be. And that's part of what we do, not only in the workshops but in retreats as well. We just have silence. And sometimes silence can be deafening and
mm,
so loud, but sometimes we just need that quiet.
mm,
And that quiet, we may end up crying. That's okay. We may end up laughing because we remember a funny story about our loved one or about our child, and
mm,
that's okay.
yeah,
So there is, and that's one of the other things. There is no wrong way to grieve, except I will say, unless you are planning on harming yourself or others, you definitely need to seek professional help. Other than that, all bets are off, and you should be allowed to grieve in your own way, your own time, and take your own journey.
for sure. I absolutely agree. And when you just said that about there's no rules, just quickly, I used to work at a hospital locally up here during the pandemic, and member of the community that was very known. Like he used to coach, and his kids played with mine. And I remember they brought him in. He coded, you know, and I think they did CPR on him for probably like not even 20 minutes, and then called it, you know.
Mhm.
And so my biggest takeaway, because I knew those people personally, in the waiting room while you're
Right.
waiting for the
Yeah.
news, well, the nurses came back there, and they told the family that he was gone,
Mhm.
and they just lost it. And one of the sons, kind of know him, threw one of the chairs across the room, and
Mhm.
there would be the perception and the reaction of the nurse was so disgusting to me in that moment, because he was just like, "Oh, look at how they're acting. Why are they acting like that?" Like, they just lost a relative. Like, how about you get out of the room, and
Mhm.
allow them, like, they're not trying to beat on you or the nurses or the doctors, like, they are grieving. And I
Exactly.
think that's one of the misconceptions, I feel like, in certain communities. We tend to be a little bit more emotional, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
so that emotion comes out, so someone else can easily interpret that as aggression, and
Right.
then, they feel fearful, and I feel like, that's not fair. So there's definitely a certain level of like education that needs to be had, like, all around the board, just
Mhm.
as far as like, hey, um different people grieve in different ways. Like, some people are
Yes.
silent, they don't respond at all. Some people, they just they go inside themselves, and they don't, some come out and some never do.
Yeah.
Some just they're expressive,
Mhm.
it's not, there's nothing wrong with that, though. So
Right.
I appreciate you for saying that, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in the medical field, they need to know that, you know.
Yes. Absolutely.
In your work, you blend practical tools with heartfelt encouragement. Could you share an example of a specific tool or strategy that has been especially impactful for your clients?
Being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm,
Being uncomfortable and being honest with yourself and where you are at any given time or a particular time. So, again, in society, generally, when you see someone or greet someone, you say, "How are you?" And then the obligatory response is, "I'm fine." Well, in grief, being honest with yourself, and in those moments where you're not necessarily fine, being able to articulate that,
Yeah.
being able to say, I'm not okay in this moment. I need to step away for a moment. I need, you know, I need to step away. We just came out of the holiday season. Being able to step back from some invitations that you may have received. I'm not up to attending that particular event this year. That doesn't mean I want you to stop inviting me. I'm just not going to attend this event.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, I have to go to cousin Michelle where she just decided she wasn't going. So guess what? She's not going. And again, we have to be comfortable and honest enough with ourselves to say, to advocate for ourselves, to say what we are and aren't going to do. If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. And no explanation is possible. You don't want to go, don't go.
Mhm.
And don't allow people to pressure you into doing something that you're not comfortable doing.
Exactly.
And so that is definitely one of the things that we work on quite a bit, is finding your own voice on your grief journey.
I love that. Can you just give me 1 second? Yeah,
Absolutely.
1 second. I'm sorry, my computer was on the verge of
Oh
trying to
dear.
die. Uh, okay. So yeah, being comfortable with being uncomfortable is definitely a big thing. So can you just go like elaborate a little further? Like what are some like tools or advice that you would give somebody to practice getting comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Grounding yourself, again, finding that music, finding that one song that is what I would call your go-to. So find that one song that will just take you to a place of being grounded, and just sit quietly, just sit and breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe. That's one of the first things to start with, is just breathing. Not hyperventilating, but taking measured breaths in and out, in and out. And that in and of itself can begin to center you.
Like that. And breathing tech. So, do you work with like breathing techniques and like breath work, or is it just like just simple?
Yeah, not breath work specifically, but just that one breathing technique. I believe it's there are several, actually. 7 8 1 4 3 4 5. Breathe in for 3, hold for 4, out for 5, and in for 7, hold for 1, out for 8. I mean, there's any number of different ones, and whatever one works for you, because you may not feel like holding your breath for 7 seconds, or you may not feel like holding your breath for 5 seconds. So whatever works for you, taking intentional time to practice that activity. So breathing in for several seconds, holding it for several seconds, and releasing it for several seconds, whatever that looks like, whatever feels most comfortable for you.
Absolutely. And it's amazing. Like even if it's not like quotations like breath work, I know like just breathing techniques in general have played a major part in like my day to day based activities for just like or kind of like straightening out my nervous system, right?
Mm.
Because a lot of the times, like you end up going like in fight or flight or like
Mhm.
hyperventilating. Like, why am I breathing so fast? Like, why is my heart beating so fast? Like, what's happening? um, you've spoken about the restorative power of travel.
Mm.
Can you share a specific travel experience that helped you heal or gain perspective?
Absolutely. I have to go back to that Cancun experience. That was the singular event that just transformed everything.
I love that. And um, question:
Yes.
I feel like some of us like get insight or heal better in different environments? It seems like for you, like that was it for you because it was, do you think it was the water or just like the
Oh, it was
overall?
absolute it was that well, one of the things was the water, and like I said, the sun, I mean, just the heat of the sun and the wind blowing through my hair, but absolutely the water. I love water. I think I could live on a cruise ship. I really could. I
I
just
love
love being on the water. I love watching water.
that.
Yes, I just love water.
All right,
I'm a
so
water girl. I love it.
let me ask you this, and me too. My mother, she always says like when she needs to like get in tune with her intuition, she always says, "Oh, I have to go to the water." You know, but some people are different because some people they have to be grounded in like on like the land or a
Mhm.
certain
Absolutely.
so like how would you suggest a person can figure out like what element best suits them to get in touch or tune with what they're not actually hearing?
What do you tend to gravitate toward, if anything? You know, do you like what types of nature do you like being around? Do you like mountains? Do you like trees? Do you like just grass? You know, because some people could just sit out in their backyard and lay around in the grass and be absolutely,
Okay.
fabulous. And that, that's their thing. So finding your thing. And I mean, and you know what? That may take time. It may take experiencing a number of different activities, a number of different events to find out what your thing is and what centers and grounds you.
I love that. Yeah. And I think like I've seen so many more people becoming like more in tune with like just world, like the world. So whether it's like going to sit by the water or just sitting out in the park, like me, for example, I was just talking about this yesterday on someone else's podcast. The fact that I was telling people, which was very untrue, but I was telling people I have agoraphobia, right? So like I was just going to work and coming home because I'm like, I don't want to be outside to the point where that almost became not an option for me.
Mm,
I don't want to go too much because this isn't about me, but once I realized, like, when I got my second chance to be able to go outside, I was like, wow, like, I really do enjoy being outside. Like, even if it's snowing out here right now, but like,
mm,
it feels good. Like, it feels good to be able to actually like enjoy God's creation, and just be amongst and around in it. So
yes,
I don't know if it's the water or the snow. I don't prefer the snow, but I'm
I
grateful
know,
for it.
right?
So we'll see.
And I love the snow. I love to watch it and see it on the ground and then not have to deal with it. But,
Yeah, I don't want to,
not have to shovel
shovel
it in.
yeah, nobody wants to do that. But I am grateful. I am very grateful that I get the opportunity and the experience to be able to see it and walk on it.
Yeah.
So there's that. What role does faith play in your personal journey, and how do you incorporate it into your coaching and advocacy?
Faith, faith is faith is everything. Like I said, it is. I also often also told the story that it's not. This is really not me. This is absolutely the Lord carrying me through each and every moment, each and every step, each and every day of this journey. Because in and of myself, there is absolutely no way I could see myself um, not doing anything but just wasting away. And I recognize at this point that that's not serving anyone. It's not serving me. It's not serving my family. It's definitely not honoring Chantal. But at the same time, that pain can be absolutely debilitating. But again, just leaning on several key scriptures that, again, finding those go-tos that resonate and ground me and keep me regularly. And one that absolutely is my go-to is Second Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, where it says, my grace is sufficient for you. So as long
Mhm.
as I have his grace to take me through this journey, then that's all I need. And that's another thing that we discuss in our coaching program, in my one-on-one work with my clients, is finding what works for you, because this is not a one size fits all proposition in any way, shape, or form. You really do need to find what works best for you, what resonates with you, what centers you. And so we explore those various areas and come to a place where you can take that and move forward and be able to use that as a tool as you're navigating your journey on a regular basis. So it's not just a one time thing. And, I found this one scripture and, I'll set it aside and, keep continually looking for others. Not that there aren't a whole lot of others, because the Bible's filled with them. There's many
Yeah.
promises in there. However, just finding those 1, 2, 3, just several that you can go back to at a moment's notice to, to bring you to that place of peace in that, at least in that moment.
Exactly. And then, so this is like it's a constant thing though. So like, do you teach people like regiments? Because, like with the inspiration, and like maybe finding a scripture that might get you through the moment, right? And that time, and kind of like restructure the way that you're thinking. But earlier you said, this is a reoccurring thing. So it's not more or less like, oh, it's just stages. It's like, hey, like it comes and goes. Like it's
Mhm.
an in and out type of, not linear, but kind
Right.
of.
Yeah.
You know. Mm. So, like, are there any suggestions or recommendations as far as like housekeeping? And I know that sounds like so like I don't know how that sounds, but just to keep that momentum going for as long as possible.
Reg- be consistent and regular. So it's not just a one-time thing. So it's not just it may not be effective, but you can't just find one thing one time and then not come back to it and then let it go. And you may need to find different scriptures for different situations. So let's talk about anger. Anger is absolutely a very real emotion that we deal with in grief. Scripture says, be angry, but sin not. That may be a scripture that you gravitate toward. Write about it. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you in this moment? And that may be something that you can go back to in another time that you're feeling angry, or have a particular a journal for those angry times.
Mm.
Your go-to scripture, I'm just going to use that as an example. Your go-to scripture is, be angry and sin not. Okay, in the journal entry for that day, okay, I'm angry about the fact that I will never be a grandmother to Chantal's children. How does that make me feel? How can I not sin in this particular emotion that I'm feeling at this point? How can I move forward in this moment to not be angry or not sin in as part of my anger right now?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So, what's your vision for the future of your work, and how do you hope to continue honoring your daughter's legacy through it?
Absolutely. So my vision really is that at one day we'll live in a world where grief is openly expressed, openly acknowledged, openly discussed, and not shunned and not swept under the rug. And it's something that we can freely talk about whenever we need to. We can express our emotions whenever we need to, and fear be not be fearful that our grief is being invalidated, or that we're somehow being told that we're grieving too long, we're grieving the wrong way, any of those negative comments that can be made with regard to those that are grieving. And one of the ways that I am absolutely working on towards, as far as honoring Chantal on the long term, is to develop a foundation for not only for grieving moms, but also for to teach the babies how to read. When Chantal was about 6 months old, I went back to graduate school, and she spent weekends with my aunt, or at least Saturday mornings. And one of their favorite activities was reading, and that's where she developed her love of reading. Chantal had her nose in a book constantly. We would drive places and we'd get to our destination and we'd say, Chantal, how did we get here? Just in case you need to get home or tell somebody how to get you home. She wouldn't know because she had her nose in the entire time. And then, when Nooks and Kindles and things of that nature came out, we were like, oh, well, that'll be a great gift. She can put all of her books in one place. She'll always have a book. She'll never be without her book. And she was like, okay, but she rarely used it. She had to feel that paper between her fingers. So she was a true book person. So absolutely teaching the babies, and even if our foundation doesn't necessarily directly is directly involved in those literacy activities, at least being able to provide the funding to those organizations that do provide that early literacy activities for our babies.
I love that so much. And I feel like that is something that you don't, I mean, especially in this area, I feel like you don't see too much as far as that literacy part for the children. It just really starts and ends at school. And then, if you're lucky, um, they're being helped at home, or not.
Right.
But I think that's a beautiful thing. I love like children that are open to learning and just want to be able to like ingest all of the things. So, um, if you can leave one message for someone watching this episode today who is currently struggling with loss, what would it be?
Your grief is valid. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. You have the right to grieve in your own way, in your own time. This is your journey. No one else can walk it for you.
I love that. And I just want to pull out something you said about like the time frame, right? Because I feel like that has to be highlighted. It's very important, regardless of what type of grief people go through. I feel like a lot of humans have the really bad habit of trying to speed someone through their process, right?
Mhm.
Like we have like a time limit on it. When you were talking about like even going back to work, right? And getting 3 days of grievance. And then, that basically you're not getting the same employee that, you had when
Yeah,
they left. I feel like that is a huge thing. Um,
absolutely.
People, I think that there's a lack of patience behind grief that
Hmm.
like, there needs to be a bigger conversation on, and there should be more awareness about. And it makes me wonder, like, is it like this in other countries? I need to try
Mm.
because is it just
Yes,
like
you need to
America?
travel and do that research.
I need
Definitely research project. Oh yes,
I
I'm
need
up
to
for
know.
it.
Uh, the last question I have for you is how do you measure the impact of your work and what has been the most rewarding moment in your journey so far?
Oh, how do I measure the impact? Hmm. It would be for another mother to be able to know that her grief is validated and be able to having that, just being able to navigate your grief in your own way is huge, and that's one of the ways that my work can be recognized, if you will. And I'm not even sure how to quantify that, because it's still, even with that, it still looks different for everyone. So even if I've worked with an individual and they found their voice, they can now advocate for themselves. They're going back out in, they're going back to work, or they've started, their nonprofit, their business, things of that nature. There are still they'll still have moments. There may still be moments when they don't want to get out of the bed. And you know what? That's okay, because there are at least, another one of my philosophies is, um, if you're not feeling as though you can go out into the world, don't.
Mhm.
There are at least 2 days of the year, the day Chantal arrived and the day she left, that I don't plan anything for, because I don't know what that day is going to look like. And that's okay. but my other thing is if I can reasonably function, reasonably articulate myself for 362 days out of the year, then give me the grace to not have to deal with those other several days and
Exactly.
whatever that looks like.
Exactly.
So for me, that would be the thing for a mother to be able to find her voice, to find that that capacity to be able to advocate for herself and to be able to own her grief and grieve in her own way in her own time. And again, I don't know if that's actually quantifiable, or if there's any tangible anything that can be put to that, but that would be my goal.
I absolutely love that. And I wish you all of the success, and I see you doing really great things. Your walk is by far guided. Like I just know that it is. I can see it. And so I send you so much positive and loving vibes and energy. And I want to thank you so much for making time to be here today and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
For
Thank you for the
I
opportunity. I really appreciate it.
absolutely. For the audience watching, I want you guys to make sure you leave a comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was from this. Also, make sure you check out Jacqueline's website. It's scrolling down at the bottom, jjsmithconsulting.com. Right? Isn't it right? Okay.
Yes.
And always make sure you guys hit the like button, always subscribe, and then keep an eye out for Jacqueline's podcast, which is coming out.
The first one on January 19th, which is a Quiet Strength podcast. And then stay tuned for Faith and Finance.
That is tomorrow. Okay, yes. You have to send me your podcast link so I can subscribe too, because
Thank
I
you.
want to hear it. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. So thank you guys for tuning in today. That's all we have for you. Have a blessed day and bye bye.